almost on time. Just about. What a week. Sing it, Jimmy.
Don't want it with us. I can tell you one time that we'll fuck you up. I can tell you one time, go grab your guns. I'll tell you one time, this day belongs to us. Why?
Show me all that's left after fighting. And clearly, that's all that's left. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the War Room. I am your host, Sean Pwnery, and I have been doing this since day one. Can you believe it? Since the day this war began. So, how do I want to go about starting this? Well, I've had a week. Good God, have I had a week. I injured myself at work. Still standing. I have handled my finances. Paid off my car. And I'm about to go into debt for $42,000 for the next one. Maybe. This is something that I'm very good at. When I decide I want to do something, I do it. And I have researched and I have decided what I wanted to do next in my life, and I have decided to go ahead and do it. And if you are a follower of my social media, you will probably see what I did tomorrow. Maybe. Hopefully. I don't know. I grew up with very fast cars, very big finned cruisers, very old cars with fat fenders and running boards. And when I got out of high school, I did a lot of 4x4s. And a lot of my 4x4s would involve doing Cummins engine swaps on vehicles that never came with them. And I would just do like a body on a frame swap, or I would grab the entire drivetrain out of the donor vehicle and drop it into the frame of my current vehicle and leave everything stock, leave it alone. Well, I'm about to delve into possibly that world again, but that world has changed dramatically, because when I used to do it, there were no restrictions and no emissions tests and no bullshit. And as of 2007 onward, they kept adding emissions bullshit on diesels. And what's really strange to me is we have been sold a lie. And this country has fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker, in two ways. One, emissions. Two, electric vehicles. The emissions that's the one that really bothers me. I'm going to challenge you all who are looking to buy a new vehicle, or to keep the one you got running, or planning on getting one in the future, to look at what vehicles in the world are exempt from emissions testing, EPA restrictions, things like that. Then I want you to look at how many global cargo container ships actually run in the world. Now, I'm gonna save you a little bit of trouble here. The number of registered cargo container ships in the world is a little over 5,000. And what I'm going to tell you may not come as a surprise to some of you, but maybe come as a huge surprise to others. Cargo container ships are emissions exempt. So are government vehicles. So are military vehicles. How many cargo container ships would you guess put out more emissions than every motorized vehicle in the world? Should I do that in a Clarkson voice? In the world. How many of those cargo ships put out more emissions than all of the motorized vehicles used by the rest of the world combined? Spoiler, 15. 15 cargo ships out of over 5,000 exempted emissions cargo ships. 15 of those put out more emissions than every motorized vehicle that humankind uses combined. Kind of fucked up. And because of all these stupid emissions restrictions that they put on passenger vehicles, it has bled into diesel engines for passenger trucks. Now, I live in a state where there is no emissions testing for diesel vehicles. Great, right? And I'm looking at buying one. Great. However, it has all this emissions crap on it because the EPA mandated it. Now, I live in a state where I don't need it, which means I should be able to delete it. And what's really crazy is the thing I'm looking at will double in efficiency and longevity if I take all that crap off. But I have to buy it where it had it on. How much damage has been done up until the point I took possession of it? And then, can I find a place that can do what I need to be done to get rid of all that crap? And then retune the computer so I don't have to worry about it ever failing. See, 6 to 8 years ago, I could have did that, no problem. But I wasn't in the market for it 6 to 8 years ago. And the restrictions got worse and more stringent. And the EPA started cracking down on shops that would allow you to do that, to remove these things. So it's kind of a case-by-case basis. I have to find a place in my state that's emissions exempt for diesels to do the work before I commit myself to a $42,000 car note. If they can do it, I'm on board. If they can't do it, I got a lot to think about. Anyway, that's not what today's about, though. We are in the war room. Today is day 226. We are 3/4 of a year into this bullshit. Pwnery used to host a show called The Week in Review, where we talked about your gun rights, where we talked about whatever was going on in my co-host lives. We can't do that right now. We can't enjoy just kicking back and relaxing, because I took it upon myself to cover this, because this event is history. This event maybe, not yet, but maybe looked back upon in history books someday as World War III. We don't know that yet. I have chosen to take it upon myself to make my channel known in live podcasts for this. So, until this is over, this is what I'm doing. And I thank you all for coming and watching and participating. Now, before I drag in my co-host, I'm going to acknowledge you guys. Ooh, there's a shop, LL Firearms. Good evening to you, sir. Good evening to Gunmetal Guy. Good evening to Zorro and Terry Scherer and Shady Hill Homestead. My usual suspects. Zorro, if you want to be on tonight's show, get your ass in the green room. I will drag you in. You're looking at the thumbnail, and it's a little cut off because it was too wide. And what I was going to tell you all is the theme of today's show, because as you know, the War Room has evolved. It used to be a show where I would just read you the stories of the day, but then the stories became gapped out, and I gave you the stories of the week. And I thought, most of you guys, y'all are well-informed people. You don't need me just to regurgitate what you probably already saw. So I have changed the format of the show in such a fashion that I'm going to ask a question, or I'm going to raise a theory or a point, and I'm going to take my panelists and I'm going to present stories that either support or deny my theory. And my panelists will help me do that. Fair enough. Today's theme is Doomsday. Red Dawn? And where is the Belgorod? And where is it headed? So it's kind of a three-part thing. So before I completely bore Scott to death, let me drag my co-host in. So, I will start with Scottish Naya. Scott P79, who just recently picked up a new toy. If you want to talk about it, go right ahead and do that.
Yes, I did.
Tell the lovely people what you acquired this week.
A Sig Sauer 2226
Trade-in.
40 cal though.
Yes. LE trade-in, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. And my other co-host is, Mikhail Nightstrikesky, usually known as Nightstrike, who hosts a show called Hit or Miss, which you can find Tuesday nights, 9 o'clock, typically.
Yeah. And technically, the show tonight has an alternative name.
Yes, I see it. I read it in the chat.
The Hunt for the Red October. I mean the Belgorod.
We're going to kill a friend.
Duh.
So, Scott disclosed what he recently acquired this week. Why don't you
He got
share with the
something
lovely
good.
people what you're going to go pick up tomorrow? Go ahead. Because
Me.
Scott has one, and I have one, and now you're about to
Oh.
have one.
Oh yeah. You mean that thing that Jaime doesn't have because he had health issues.
So he says.
So he says.
Hey,
Ah.
just saying, pulling a tooth is $150.
Wow, Scott hit that on the head.
That's only like, what, 175 round drum full of 7.62 by 39?
That's
Maybe two.
That's what, just a pair of pliers and just a yank.
Yeah.
Ice skating blade and a rock if you're Tom Hanks on an island.
Anyways, yeah, tomorrow I'm driving about an hour or so into the capital, of South Carolina, so I can pick up an RPK.
Our boy Mike is all grown up.
Well,
Because Scott and I, we bought in to your state. To your credit, we bought into your state, Palmetto State. We bought into Palmetto State Armory's Romanian kit build RPKs. I have one. Scott has one. And
By the way, you kept AWAG having a job.
we
because,
kept him busy.
Yeah.
And we wanted to share the joy of the fruits of his labor, and we wanted to share that joy with our friends. So we kept browbeating our friends like Might Strike and like Zorro and whoever else was in the room at the time.
You,
And
you
we were
say
like, y'all need to
you
get
say
one of these.
browbeating. I say badger.
Well,
Same thing.
take your hazing like a man.
All right, all right.
This
But
is
anyways,
Go ahead.
anyways, I'm not getting a PSA Romanian parts kit RPK.
It's okay.
Guys, I don't know why I keep acquiring them from a certain Asian country, but I found for a better price. I found a Norinco NHM 91 RPK.
Right.
So that's what I'll be picking up because
Yeah.
So
I-
apparently, Zorro has betrayed us.
Yes, I know. He's a traitor.
No, did you see his comment?
Yes, that's why I said he's a traitor. He's not gonna
he
buy
calls him
one
bitching.
because he wants to act like a poor. Whatever.
All right.
Anyway,
Mhm.
no. See, you're getting the Norinco one. So what we'll do is Scott and I will be standing there with our Romanian ones, and you'll be standing there with your Chinese one, and we will simply look at you and go, "Ah, I see you are a man of culture."
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's fine. It's fine.
But yeah. No, I'm going to look at it, and if everything is good tomorrow, I will be bringing it home, and
Very
I will
good.
have RPK.
Very good.
Now I gotta go buy a drum mag because
Yes.
I don't think I have any drum mags for my AK. But whether or not I get the RPK or not, I need drum mags for my AK.
It's, honestly, I'm looking at my wall right now. I don't leave mine on the wall
Overrated.
with the drum. I leave it on with the 40 rounder.
Yep.
That's
Now,
another thing I need to get. I need to get 40 round mags too.
dude, there were tons of them. They were only like,
ACI.
yeah, they were like what, no, wait, was that what I got?
Yeah,
I don't know.
probably.
I bought a shit ton of these 40 rounders. I think I only paid like $14 a piece for them.
Yeah.
Zorro is pulling the poor card.
I know. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. He's got to get a tooth. Once he gets his tooth, then we can butt stock check him with our RPKs, and then he can get another tooth.
The only problem I have right now with getting that RPK is
Heavy.
it doesn't have the one thing that almost every other rifle I have has.
You can get that. Yours takes standard AK furniture.
No.
AKM
no,
furniture.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Oh.
He wants a carry handle.
No, not
No,
I do,
because only
yeah.
the Romanians have that.
Yes, I do want a carry handle, but that's not what I'm talking about either.
Hmm.
All my other rifles have one thing that the RPK does not.
PSA logo stamped on the side of them.
Bayonet lug.
No, what is
Well,
it?
he does have a few of their ARs.
A bayonet lug.
Yeah, but it's got a bipod.
I know. But
That's
Overrated.
Bipods are cool.
Doesn't have
If
a
you have
bayonet
to-
lug. Almost every other rifle I own has a bayonet lug.
You
at
are
least.
not going to bayonet somebody with a 23.5-inch barrel.
No.
No.
Ah,
No.
oh, come on.
No. Kalash Bash is going on, right?
Yes.
Right
Yeah.
now.
Where I should be, but I can't
Right
be.
meow.
I can't be because, I signed on the dotted line.
Because you're poor.
No, well, I made myself a poor.
No, because not
Whose
because
fault
he's
is
a
that?
poor. Not because he's a poor. It's because he's Team Ramen Noodle.
I got a pretty sweet ride, though.
Well,
Y'all-
you haven't
y'all-
even picked
you guys
That
will
I
it
see it
up.
advise
tomorrow.
you not to get.
You guys on social media are going to see it tomorrow.
We told you not to get that. Now
Yeah,
you
I
won't
know,
be getting
but
any guns.
the thing
for the
is
next
if I
6
get
years.
it and it lasts the 6 years I'm financing it, it's great. If it breaks down the day I buy it, you can kill me.
No, we're just going to ride your ass about it for the next 6 years.
No, I'm going to fake my death, and I will literally fake my death and let gap coverage pay it off. Anyway,
Yeah, I don't think it works like that.
no, gap coverage in the event of my death, gap coverage forgives my loan, which means my 87-year-old dad gets to inherit my new sweet ride. Or my mom. Could you imagine a little Korean woman hopping into the thing I bought? It's gonna be like an Oompa Loompa jumping on an elephant. It's gonna be hilarious. Anyway, personals week in review. Let's go ahead and do that because this shit the today's show, I told everyone this morning. I was like, today's show is going to be quick because I have a theme and it's going to be just bing bang bong. We're gone. We can play warships and have a great weekend. That's not going to happen. By the time I was done posting all the stories of the day, I was like, fuck. Here we go again, right?
Another 2.5 hour show.
Well, yes. And because I wasted 30 minutes on intros, 3 hours. Anyway, what can I
hence
tell
my
you?
first comment.
Yes. What can I tell you this week that I had accomplished? One, my K31 is a little bit more complete. I got one of the hardest parts to get to finish my K31 today.
I'd argue the parts you're missing are harder.
No, the bolt was the hardest part. Because the firing pins are non-existent right now. I can't remember the name of that shop. I keep forgetting it. But they make aftermarket firing pins out of stock. Been out of stock forever. So, couldn't get it from them. Found a guy on eBay, on the eBays, like 3 weeks ago, before payday. And it was like, I've got K31 bolts for sale. And they're only like $169, something like that. It was 169 bucks. And he was like, I got 4 available. And I'm like, can't you wait till payday? No, they couldn't. All 4 sold. I was pissed. Beside myself. Angry, pissed off. I also, I'm gonna say this, and I'm not gonna badger the shop that sold it to me. But I bought what I thought was a Type 99 Arasaka. Picked it up local. Turns out it wasn't. It was a Type 99 Arasaka trainer, smoothbore, non-firing piece of shit. Had to argue with the shop owner for an hour. Got my refund. Cool. So that money went back and found the bolt for the K31 because apparently somebody flaked on the guy who had 4 for sale, so 1 became available. So I bought it. And he had it at my door in 48 hours. That dude was serious. I'm going to...
What happens when it's your job?
Well, is it? I don't know if that guy was not that Colorado gun sales guy. If that's what you were kind of alluding towards.
No.
What I can tell you is this bolt body has a serial number that's actually older than the bolt that was incomplete in the rifle I bought. But I didn't use it. I took all the pieces except the bolt body and the bolt face because that's what my rifle came with. I took all his pieces and recompleted my bolt so it's a serial numbers matching bolt. That, and I don't have to worry about headspace because that bolt and face was headspace to this receiver. So should be fine.
Still would recommend getting a gauge.
I will. I actually will. But I can tell you that my 9124... Oh, shit, I can't remember the variation of the Swiss ammo that I made. I think it's 90.
GP11.
No, it's like GP 91 or something. 9124. It's like lower pressure. Those cases I loaded to the same dimensional spec as GP11, and it chambered just fine. It's not as powerful. Pretty sure I could shoot it because it's lower power than what it's supposed to take because I made that ammo for my 89. Fit in the chamber just fine. Ejected just fine. Fed just fine. I don't have a magazine yet though. And I think I am going to hold out for that 12-round magazine. Why not, right? If I had a 6-rounder, I wouldn't have been looking to upgrade to the 12. But my rifle came with no magazine, so I might as well just go straight to the 12. Because it's only like $30 or $40 difference. Except that site you showed me. They have them. And I might order it anyway. Because $85, right? So I might still do that. But my K31 still needs a magazine, an upper handguard, and one action floor plate screw, and that's it. And then it's good to go. And then I'll do a this old gat on it because I had to reassemble it. It'll be a short show, or it'll be a short episode though, because I didn't need to do a lot with that one. It's in nice shape, and I haven't taken the butt plate off yet because I was told that in the butt plate or behind the butt plate of K31s, if they haven't been messed with, you can find the original paperwork stuck in there like a build sheet for the year it was built and the division that it was issued to. So I thought, oh, that's cool. I haven't done it yet though.
It's actually not that. It's the soldier it was issued out to.
Yes. So it's like I'm kind of hoping I take that apart and be like, ooh, it's in there. You know,
I know
'cause
mine's in there.
I know build sheets. I had a 1941 Buick, and I found the original build sheet for it tucked up in the seat springs. And I felt like a kid in a candy store. Like, I was like, oh my God, this is cool. Somebody's grandfather built this. My dad was 6 years old when this car was built, you know? Shit like that. So I thought that was cool. Other personal issues. Apparently my girlfriend's kind of in a rough spot right now, but she's being very cryptic. And I don't think she's in the chat tonight. So when I'm done with the show, I'm going to have to call her and be like, are you okay? Because I'm going to have to figure that out. Because you know me. I'll take the shirt off my back for somebody, so I had to deal with that. My dog, she ate all her dinner today with no fuss. For those of you who don't know, she has issues. She's looking right at me. She's a good girl. Anyway, she's had issues ever since her daughter gave me a litter of puppies. She's been kind of in a depressive funk, and it really affected her health, and I've been sort of emergency room triaging her back to health for the last 3 months. Jesus Christ. I have to hand feed her with a straw. It's just a nightmare. But she's okay. She seems okay. She's going to get her bath and be all prissied up and everything. If you follow my social media, you probably also saw Tank and Light Tank, which is something I did just for fun. Because I have Yorkies that are purebred, but they don't do Yorkie things. So I trim their hair to make them look like schnauzers. And I have convinced people, somehow, on Instagram, that I am now a boutique breeder of what I call buttercream schnauzers. And people are like, oh my God, can I get one? I'm like, no, you idiots. It's not real. I just cut their hair. Anyway, that was fun.
Sean, you
Yes.
missed out on a golden opportunity.
Yeah, okay. You trade me a Cummins Dodge Ram 3/4 ton, and I'll give you the
You'd have less dogs, is all I'm saying.
I will give you patient 0 of buttercream schnauzers. Anyway, I love my dogs. I have, for those of you who don't know, I have 8 Yorkies.
You'd have less if you took that if you rolled with that. I'm
Yeah,
just
but
telling you.
you wouldn't understand the joys of the sounds of a fox hunt at 5:50 a.m. every fucking
I've had
morning.
4 dogs at one time. That's enough.
But
I only want no more than 2 dogs ever at a time ever.
8 uncontrollably yapping dogs at 5:50 a.m. It's one of life's greatest joys.
I hate small dogs.
No, you're missing it. It's one of life's greatest joys, and I'm saying that with an eye twitch. Like, I want to
It's
share
not.
that misery with everybody.
You've literally turned into an old person, Sean.
No, I don't have cats. Fuck cats.
No, you've
No,
got
you-
little yappy dogs.
You got little yappy dogs.
Hey,
I work with old people all the time, and guess what? 9 times out of 10, they have a yappy little dog,
okay,
not a cat.
but I will
Mhm.
have you know. I've had big dogs. I've had Malamute / wolf hybrid dogs. Okay, I've dated people and been engaged to people with pit bulls and shit like that. Right? None of those dogs did what my little yappy dog did. She ran full force. She jumped off a chair off the top of the deck and caught a bird midair and killed it. No
I have
other
actually
dog I had
seen-
did that.
I have seen pit bulls actually jump up and catch birds.
Well, that's fine. A Yorkshire Terrier did that.
I
Like-
had a retriever that would catch squirrels and bring it back to me.
I saw her do that, and I was just like, remind me not to get on your bad side. She has killed squirrels, birds, and 2 possums in my backyard in 3 years. She's a killer. She's
So what
really-
you're saying is she's big enough, she can jump high enough to
catch
reach
things in
belt
midair.
level.
Catch midair, catch birds in midair. All I'm saying is she's got the instinct. It's kind of cool. Anyway, Xena Warrior Princess, whatever. Anyway, we have a lot of stories to get through, so let's just go ahead and get through them because
Okay.
I've wasted 31 minutes of the precious viewers' time. so-
See, even Zorro thinks you're an old man with yappy little dogs.
Yes.
But I have an RPK.
I'll have one tomorrow.
Well, I told him just trade the Galil.
Yeah,
It has the shop in Arizona and California.
exactly. You know what it is? And you know
Because let's
what?
face it, Galil suck because they're bullpups.
Well, I'm gonna
They're also 5.56.
I'm gonna sidebar this for a second, okay? I think his Galil is cool, first of all, but I can completely understand why someone of physically smaller stature would not want an RPK. The damn things are very front heavy, okay?
And Galil is very
Hero
rear
stock.
heavy.
Don't get the NATO stock. Get the
well,
Warsaw
but yeah,
stock.
but see, rear heavy's easy to deal with because that kind of digs into your shoulder, whereas the RPK always wants to tip out of your shoulder and have the muzzle of the gun hit your foot. So it's like, Scott, I'm an unusually physical specimen when it comes to being Asian. I'm giant squid. So
Is that from all the arm lifting beer cans?
then no, it's my warehouse work made me put on a lot of weight. My fucking years in the gym boxing put on a lot of weight. For those of you who don't know, I started off as a lightweight and I retired as a cruiserweight. And now I'm what you would consider a heavyweight. 202 pounds as of today. For a Korean, that's kind of big. Anyway. All I'm saying is...
You're actually pretty tall for a Korean.
Yes, and Tony will tell you that too. But all I'm saying is, RPKs are very long, and they're very front heavy. And okay, they're not for everybody. But they're really fun to shoot. They're really cool, and I will recommend one to the end of the earth to anybody who's got any love for AKs. Like, get an RPK. It's like AK plus P. But yes, it's a lot of weight to deal with. Fair enough. So go get one, quit being a bitch, and lift more weights. Because that's what I do.
Get an RPK, be a man.
Be a man. Be a man. He looking like a man. Anyway, no, like the first gun I ever had to lift weights for to carry on the regular was my 4570. That fucker was heavy. The second one, this RPK. Everything else in between, I got it. I got you, bro. All right, so we're going to move on. Let's get to the stories because I have things to do. And so I'm sure everyone else does too.
Things or people?
Things. People. It's going to be a while. I'm a poor now. If you want to donate to Pwnery's I Just Went Into Debt for 42K fund, hit me up. I'm just not your typical YouTuber that's going to put up a Patreon and shit. That's all I'm saying. Like most people who we used to associate with. Not going to name any names. Anyway, today we're
I've
supposed
got
to
one, but I hardly have any support. So
we're
you know,
supposed to
you can't-
cover from day 219 to 226. However, the first story I have for you today actually started Saturday, day 220, October 1st. So we're going to go
boy.
straight into the month of October anyway. And strangely enough, the picture is titled Lyman. For those of you who are in the know, Lyman is one of the biggest reloading supply manufacturers in the United States. Because I use their All-American 8 Brass Smith turret press. And yes, like an RPK. It's big, it's heavy, I love it, and I would recommend it forever. Zorro, you have an exemption. You don't have to donate because you have to get an RPK. 100% agree. Anyway, first story, Saturday, day 220. Russia suffered another setback during Ukraine's counteroffensive, confirming that it withdrew troops from the eastern town of Lyman within the newly annexed Donetsk region. So let me get this straight. They annexed part of the country, they stole it, and then they had to retreat from it because they couldn't hold it. Okay. Ukraine's armed forces on Saturday said that they, quote, liberated 5 settlements in the Donetsk region and encircled thousands of Russian soldiers. Due to the risk of the encircled, the Allied forces were withdrawn from the Krasny Lyman to more advantageous frontiers. This came from Russia's Ministry of Defense. Basically saying we had to run with our tails between our legs. The Russian troops in the area of Lyman are encircled. Yampil, Novoselivka. Oh boy, I should have read this one ahead of time. Shandriholove, Drobisheve, and Stravsky. They're all settlements that were liberated. Stabilization measures are being conducted there. This came from Serhei Cherevyati, Speaker of the Eastern Group of Troops. That's a weird title. The advancement comes one day after Russian President Putin declared a land grab for not only Donetsk, but the Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions as well. Putin warned that Russia will now treat any attack on the 4 regions as an attack on mainland Russia, calling the Ukrainians still residing in the war-torn regions forever Russians. That doesn't sound right. But
No.
But Ukrainian forces have been making advances in western Luhansk and northern Donetsk as they inch towards the strategically important city of Sevierodonetsk, which Russia has occupied since June. Cherevyati said that some 5,000 to 5,500 occupiers were still in Lyman, but noted that it was difficult to estimate the number of troops in the areas surrounding the town due to the fluid movement of troops in combat zones. The spokesman said that some Russian troops tried to unsuccessfully break through Ukraine's barricade near the city, while others had already begun to surrender. Taking Lyman is a significant strategic win for Ukraine, but Cherevyati said that the fight to fully liberate the city was not over. Lyman has served as a major logistics and transport hub for Russian forces and its operations in northern Donetsk. Securing the city is the biggest battlefield win for Ukraine since it forced Russian troops to withdraw from roughly the entire Kharkiv region in a major counteroffensive that started last month. So yeah, we're going to annex territory and then immediately retreat from it because we can't hold it. That's the gist of that story. Good job, Russia. GG. Moving on to Sunday. And I'm going to show you a face that you haven't seen in a while. I even titled this The Ass of Spades. So, some of you may remember during, Iraq and Afghanistan, they had these playing cards. The U.S. military was given playing cards with, targets of opportunity, certain officers and people that were high-value targets, and they gave them, the Ace of Spades, the King of Diamonds, or whatever.
They're all gone.
They're all dead. Anyway, there's a new deck of cards in Ukraine with Russians, and I call this guy the Ass of Spades because he's not even Russian.
He's Chechen, right?
Yes. Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov on Saturday urged Moscow to consider deploying low-yield nuclear weapons in Ukraine after Russian forces were forced to retreat from the city of Lyman. In a shared post on Telegram, Kadyrov said he believes more drastic measures should be taken, right up to the declaration of martial law in the border areas and the use of low-yield nuclear weapons. Sidebar. Does this dipshit realize that if they actually took his advice, they would be using low-yield nuclear weapons in theaters of operation where he and his own Chechen rebel troops are fighting?
Would be in the crosshairs. Yeah.
Does he want?
Apparently, he sent his 3 kids there too.
Yeah. Does he want to become the next generation of toxic crusaders, Swamp Thing? Does he want to be that?
Apparently so.
It kind of seems like that, right?
Well, also, if Russia starts using nuclear weapons, then
It's over.
I hate to say it, but that will invoke Article 5.
It's over.
Yeah.
Actually, strangely enough, I have a story towards the end of this show that may prove that wrong. You'll see.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Russia has the largest atomic arsenal in the world, including low-yield tactical nuclear weapons designed for use against opposing armies. Other top Putin allies, including former President Dmitry Medvedev, have floated the idea that Russia may need to use nuclear weapons, but Kadyrov's suggestion was the most explicit. Now remember, Kadyrov is from a country that is in a civil conflict on 3 fronts. Chechnya is a land divided by 3 groups of people. Assholes like him, people who are anti-Russian, and the third group of people is, we're Chechens. Leave us the fuck alone. We're not pro-Russian, pro-whatever. We just want to be left alone. So, because this guy has all the guns, his third seems to be the most vocal. But just bear in mind, Chechnya is actually split in 3 in terms of what the people want.
Right.
All right. So, anyway, let's see. Putin said last week that he was not bluffing when he vowed to use all available means to defend Russia's territorial integrity. The U.S. has said that it would respond decisively to any use of nuclear weapons and has threatened catastrophic consequences if Moscow were to deploy the weapons. Kadyrov has been a vocal supporter of the war against Ukraine, with Chechen forces forming part of the vanguard of the Russian army in the region. The Chechen leader said in his post that Colonel General Alexander Lapin, commander of the Russian forces fighting at Lyman, was a mediocrity. Kadyrov suggested that the commander should be demoted to private and have all of his medals taken away. Due to the lack of elementary military logistics, today we have abandoned several settlements, and a large piece of territory, Kadyrov said. He also says that he warned Valery Gerasimov, chief of Russia's general staff, about the possibility of a defeat at Lyman 2 weeks ago, but that Gerasimov completely dismissed the idea. Should we just rename this guy General Tryhard? I mean, you will never be Russian, first of all, and you will never be given command of the Russian military. So why do you try so hard to vie for that position? Why? I don't know. It's like a newfie, like, declaring that he's gonna fight for the Union Army. You're Canadian, dude. Sit your ass down. You're never gonna be commander of the army. You're never gonna be George Washington. Sit your goofy ass down.
You're never gonna be American.
No, he can be American.
No, North American.
He'll just never be George Washington.
No.
Kadyrov, you will never be Vladimir Putin.
No. We gotta take it one step further for Putin. You will never be Lenin.
You will never be. No, who was the one that followed him?
Stalin?
No, after Stalin.
Trotsky.
No.
No.
We will bury you. Come on, Bob Hoskins played him. Billy, none of y'all know. Nikita Khrushchev.
Yes.
Anyway, let's move on. So, let's see. The next story I had a preface to this. Fingers are being pointed after 4 consecutive attacks on the Nord Stream pipelines. But who is responsible? A Swedish dive team investigated the sites in the Baltic this week. U.S. Navy sources claim to know who is responsible, but will not make any public reveals until a decision has been made on what the response will be. So the question is, who's at fault? And that leads me to this story, which I believe is still from Sunday. Yes. Okay, so here's the new picture. And the picture is titled Russian Sabotage Theory. So if you're paying attention to this photo, pay attention to the left half of it. The right half is what the surface of the ocean looks like after said sabotage. You've seen me post these pictures all last week. Anyway, Putin's press secretary, Dmitry Peskov, dismissed Ukraine's accusations last Thursday that is, that Russia was behind the Nord Stream pipeline gas leaks, calling it an act of state-sponsored terrorism. After NATO condemned it was a deliberate and reckless act of sabotage, Russia's top intelligence chief, Sergei Narishkin, said Moscow has evidence that it's the West that did it.
Oh no, not the West.
Right. So
And the West is going to say the Russians did it.
So this is
Yeah.
where the story branches off into categorical, you're full of shit. Here are 5 reasons why Russia is probably the state that orchestrated its own sabotage. First, Putin has the motivation. Facing potential defeat in Ukraine, Putin is desperate to reverse the momentum on the battlefield by resorting to dramatic escalation. This is his way of trying to compel the US and Europe to stop providing long-range weaponry to Ukraine. The outcome of the conflict in Ukraine is an existential issue for him, personally, and for Russia. Russia views Ukraine, along with other former Soviet states, as part of its strategic security perimeter. Putin has already declared adding Ukraine to NATO and integrating it into the West as a red line. Moscow views this as its version of the Monroe Doctrine.
I just need to pause here for a second because I need to put this in there.
Sure.
He said the same thing about Finland and Sweden, and they joined anyways.
Yeah, how'd that work out, right?
Right.
But since we're on the subject of red lines, who was the last asshole in this country who talked about a red line and then literally let our enemies do a fucking conga line dance right over the top of it and not do shit about it?
I believe that would be Biden.
No, before him.
Was there anybody before him?
Yeah, you didn't build that red line.
That one. Yes.
That guy. Yeah, we're not going to name him by name because that would be instant demonetization if I was a monetized channel.
If you were, yes. Well,
You didn't build that monetized channel?
I did.
I didn't. I don't have the subs.
You don't have the subs, but I did.
I don't have the subs because fucking YouTube moved the goalposts. Anyway, the risk for Putin for having Ukraine join NATO outweighs that of being condemned by NATO as a sponsor of industrial terrorism. Frustrated that he is not taken seriously, Putin is desperate to send what he thinks is a clear message. Second, damaging or destroying critical infrastructure is consistent with Russia's warfighting concept called strategic operation to defeat critical infrastructure of the adversary. Now, that's a mouthful. Russia calls it SOPKVOP. But that's what it translates to. Russian strategists spent decades conceptualizing ways to bypass the US and NATO conventional superiority in a conflict they had concluded was inevitable because Moscow and Washington have been in confrontation over control of the post-Soviet space since the collapse of the USSR back in 1991.
I call Russia's whole endeavor in this whole thing SOL. Shit out of luck.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Intended for wartime, I'm just going to call it Sopkvop, because that's what it spells. Operations also can be deployed during peacetime to, quote, destabilize the opponent's social and political situation and dislodge the adversary. I was going to say it like a Russian does, adversary. And dislodge the adversary psychologically to persuade him to abandon the fight. Russia's targeting strategy prioritizes critical infrastructure. It has spent years studying Western vulnerabilities. Sopkvop, I love saying it like that, envisions prosecuting quasi-military campaigns by employing cyber operations and other non-kinetic methods. Third, Russian military strategists have pondered a scenario in which Russia would target their adversary's civilian infrastructure during a conflict. Now, we already know this has been practiced because they hit Chernobyl, they hit Zaporizhia, they've hit the hydroelectric dams. We know that they know this is their plan, right? Let's see. Defeating a small number of key interconnected targets that are vital to the functioning of a state would cause the entire system to collapse. That's their hypothesis. In 2012, Russian strategists analyzed a 2001 incident in which the United States had involved a train that was transporting hazardous chemical materials and veered off the tracks in a Baltimore tunnel. The accident had burst a water pipe, causing a 3-foot flood that disrupted Baltimore's mail carrier and telecommunication systems. Disruption of the train and auto transportation followed along the entire Baltimore to New York corridor. Taking parts of the adversary's civilian infrastructure out of the commission, the Russian strategist argued, will produce cascading destructive effects. So they're talking butterfly effect, harming the economy, healthcare, defense, and security of the entire state. What does that sound like? Spoilers, Kung Flu.
Not the Kung Flu.
Yeah. Fourth, Russia is one of the very few countries that has the exact capability needed to sever the Nord Stream pipelines, carrying Russian gas to Europe, and to do it covertly. This is the picture I provided you. Moscow has invested in undersea warfare capabilities through its GUGI program, a top-secret program with the innocuous cover name of Deep Sea Research that includes work on undersea communications and sponsor networks, hydrocarbon exploitation, submarine rescue, and investigating wreckage. We do the same thing. We have a program in place to go and sever fiber optic buried cables across the ocean. So this is not a unique concept. We have plans like this too. Just so you know. I should have probably said sidebar. Anyway, Moscow's wargame territorial incursions in the Baltic Sea and the North Atlantic, as well as the disruption of undersea cables that carry communications. Oh, look, I just said that. It is the only country, according to the U.S. Naval Institute, that has a fleet of special mission submarines for seabed warfare and espionage, and is expanding this capability. While the U.S. and European anti-submarine warfare capabilities have atrophied since the end of the Cold War, we've kind of backed off on this thing because we thought nobody's going to be stupid enough to sever the line between East and West across the ocean. Like, who's dumb enough to do that, right?
Surprise!
Surprise! Exactly.
Well, now we know where Belgorod was.
Actually, no, because it doesn't have the capability to do this. I have a story that'll support that. You'll see. That was the naval news segment, but you'll see. Belgorod had nothing to do with this. I can categorically say that is a fact. Fifth, Putin has no use for Nord Stream in the short term, as neither Pipeline 1 or 2 were producing revenue. Moscow shut down Nord Stream 1 at the end of August, claiming that the U.S. and European economic sanctions had made the maintenance impossible. Nord Stream 2 was never operational, with Germany having declined its certification. To the contrary, taking the Nord Stream out of commission serves Putin's goal of freezing the Europeans in winter, a standard Putin move to use energy as a weapon. Russia's replacing this lost revenue with export earnings from non-Western countries, such as China, India, and even the Taliban. The $55 billion joint Russia-China pipeline, the Power of Siberia, which is partially operated since 2019, and its relations with the U.S. are irreparable. The Kremlin has the motive, the means, and a warfighting doctrine that all put the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline directly at its feet. But what do I know? I don't know shit about war.
Technically, this isn't really about war. It's about money.
It's economics war, energy war, geopolitical diplomacy war. It's still war.
It's non-conventional, so, you know.
Well, yeah. But we haven't had a conventional war since, let's see.
Bosnia.
No. We haven't had a conventional war
Persian Gulf.
technically.
Gulf War.
No. Since World War II.
No. Vietnam.
Everything else was a police action.
Vietnam.
I mean, you can't. Trust me, I will be the last person to try to downplay any military conflict after World War II, because my dad served in 2 of them after that. But
okay,
theoretically speaking,
technically you're wrong, because the last conventional war, if we're going to go by the standards of World War II, using World War II as the standard,
is World War II.
No, it wasn't World War II. It was Vietnam, because in
That
Korea
wasn't
and
a war.
Vietnam, there was still a draft, so it technically was a conventional war.
Police action.
Still a draft.
Police action, though.
Draft.
I get that. All I'm saying is, I don't. I think everything's a war.
If a draft, then it's a war. I'm
I
sorry,
think they
but it is.
all were. Me personally, I think they all were. In the
They
annals
were.
of history, the last war was World War II.
No, and they're fucking wrong.
Yes,
In
I
the
agree.
annals of history.
I agree. But whatever. I don't know shit about. I don't know shit about police actions. Then.
No, you don't know shit about history, because you're starting to sound like a liberal historian.
No, I don't know shit about police actions.
Nothing happened after World War II.
No, nothing declared as a war happened after World War II. Everything else is police actions. But I don't know shit about police actions.
You don't. So stop.
I'm being a turd about this.
You are one.
On purpose. Playing a character. Relax. They're all wars. If somebody dies in the name of their country, war.
A war.
Like, fuck you, that's a war. That's what I would like. I think we all agree.
Anyone that says otherwise can leave the room, because I'm not going to argue with
They
you.
can just eat shit. All right, moving on. Still Sunday? Yeah? Yeah, still Sunday. Still Sunday. Sunday was a busy day for news. And I'm going to bring you... I'm not going to say what I titled this picture because it's rude. But I'm going to show you the Pope. Pope Francis, on Sunday, appealed to Russian President Putin for a ceasefire, imploring him to, quote, stop this spiral of violence and death in Ukraine, and denouncing the absurd risk of uncontrollable consequences of nuclear attack as tensions sharply escalate over the war. See? He says it's a war too. I agree. Francis uttered his strongest plea yet about the 7-month-old conflict, which he denounced as an error and a horror. It was the first time in public that he cited Putin's role in the war, so he's naming him now, calling him out, name-dropping. The pontiff also called on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to be open to serious peace proposals. That's his first mistake. Francis told the public gathered in St. Peter's Square that he was abandoning his usual religious theme for his Sunday noon remarks, to concentrate his reflection of Ukraine. How the war is going in Ukraine has become so grave, devastating, and threatening that it sparks great worry, he says. In fact, this terrible, inconceivable wound of humanity, instead of shrinking, continues to bleed even more, threatening to spread. I deplore strongly the grave situation created in the last days, with further actions contrary to the principles of international law. In a clear reference, or he says this in a clear reference to Putin's illegal annexation of a large swath of eastern Ukraine. It's about 15% of the total landmass of Ukraine. It, in fact, increases the risk of a nuclear escalation to the point of fearing uncontrollable and catastrophic consequences on the world level. Rivers of blood and tears spilled these months torment me, the Pope says. I am pained by the thousands of victims, in particular among the children, and by so much destruction that leaves many persons and families homeless and threatens vast territories with cold and hunger. Certain actions can never be justified, ever, he says. He didn't elaborate, though. But Putin sought to justify launching the invasion, saying he needed to protect his country from what he called Nazi elements in Ukraine. Never mind the fact that he employed a Russian neo-Nazi organization to carry this out, by the way. Wagner Group. Google it. It's anguishing that the world is learning the geography of Ukraine through the names of Bucha, Irpin, Mariupol, Izium, Zaporizhia, and other places
Kharkiv.
that have become places of indescribable sufferings, genocide, and fears. And what to say about the fact that humanity finds itself again faced with another atomic threat? It's absurd, he says, who then called for an immediate ceasefire. My appeal is directed above all to the President of the Russian Federation, imploring him to stop, also for the love of his own people, this spiral of violence and death. On the other side, pained by the immense suffering of the Ukrainian people following the aggression undergone, I direct a similarly trusting appeal to the President of Ukraine to be open to serious proposals of peace.
He's not going to.
It is rare for the Pope to single out leaders in his frequent appeals for an end to violent conflicts. In doing so, Francis signaled his extreme worry over the deteriorating situation. May arms cease and conditions be searched for to start negotiations able to lead to solutions not imposed by force, but agreed upon, just and stable, he says. And they will be thus if they are based on respect and the sacrosanct value of human life, as well as on the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of every country, as well as the rights of minorities and of legitimate concerns. We see that's where you fucked up, because you're appealing to a man who has no regard for the value of human life. That's your first mistake. That's your second mistake. First one I said earlier. Anyway. Invoking God's name and the sense of humanity that lodges in every heart, he renewed his many pleas for an immediate ceasefire. Without elaborating, Francis also called for the recourse to all diplomatic instruments, including those so far possibly not utilized, to end this immense tragedy. The war itself is an error and a horror, the pontiff lamented. Throughout the war, Francis has denounced the recourse to arms, but recently he stressed Ukraine's right to defend itself from aggression. Logistics complications have frustrated his often stated hope to make a pilgrimage to Ukraine to encourage peace efforts. Now, while I was reading that, I kept pausing because I read something that Fine Ape had asked. How many fingers need to be poured? I'm thinking 3 fingers of rye just ain't gonna cut it. It's not. You're gonna need 4 fingers in a rock glass with 3 cubes of ice. And at least Wild Turkey 151. Or something stronger. And you're gonna need to refill that glass several times. As I'm sure Pope Francis has done, as I'm sure Vladimir Putin has done, as I'm sure I have done, possibly what Scott has done, possibly what Mike has done. Because there is no reasoning this crap out. This has been a nightmare on a global scale, which had started because of the wet dream of one communist Cold War derelict asshole who's about to turn 70. You can't rationalize that. He was drunk when he came up with the idea. Probably called Nancy Pelosi for advice.
And her advice was
Drink more.
Drink more and follow adopt California style laws.
Drink more and blame your opposition. Anyway, moving on. Still on Sunday, apparently.
Or Navalny.
No, he's in jail. Moving on.
He is the opposition.
Now, I will tell you what I called this picture. I titled it Cock Blocking Asshole. Demonetized.
As if we were monetized.
Well, because you're going to recognize who I'm talking about when you see the picture.
Am I now?
Yeah. The Nordstrom underwear model. NATO's top official has stressed that the organization believes that a major German oil and gas pipeline suffered damage as a result of sabotage, and any attack on NATO infrastructure will be met with a firm and unified response. Wow, no shit. Right, gut and roughneck, you got it.
So they're invoking Article 5 then.
Do you find apes want to live forever?
Nah.
No, he said right gut and roughneck. Recrows roughnecks. Anyway. All evidence points again that this is sabotage deliberately done by someone against these pipelines. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, Der Spiegel underwear model, said during an appearance on NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday. What is important now is that we support the ongoing investigation so we get the best possible picture of what happened and are able to establish all of the facts. Now, this was from Sunday. I will have you know that several days later, I have it on good authority that the source that told me this knows what he's talking about. The U.S. Navy knows exactly who did this.
Of course they do.
Guaranteed.
U.S. Navy owns the fucking ocean.
They know who did this. They sent the Swedes to go check it out, to confirm it. We know who did this. We know exactly how they did it and who did it. But they're not going to publicly announce it. Not until they know how they're going to punish who did it. Which makes me wonder, if you know who did it, and you're keeping your cards that close to your chest, are you sure it wasn't you? Just saying. Anyway.
It was Poland in the water with the spear.
You're playing Clue right now, aren't you?
I am.
It was the Slav with the pipe in the library. That kind of thing, right? Yeah, I got you.
They
I
said
caught that instantly when you started doing that.
They said they know who did it, but they're not going to tell us. So I figured,
no.
we might as play Clue.
The Navy officially didn't say that. Somebody I know who knows people in the Navy said that. And I have no reason not to believe him.
I know who you know who knows people.
Yes.
Regardless of the reason. It's just that kind
we have
saying
sources
it like that makes you want to just guess, all nonchalantly like Clue, because honestly, it's more fun.
Listen. I don't know shit about war, but this source that I have is solid. I believe him. Anyway, let's see. Where am I at? The deliberate attack on a critical NATO infrastructure will be met with a firm and unified response from NATO, he added. The Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipeline systems, which funnel oil and gas from Russia to Germany, suffered unprecedented leaks last week. 3 leaks recorded on the same day prompted accusations of sabotage, with which Moscow officials acknowledged was a possibility. Excuse me? It's a possibility.
It's weird when everybody agrees.
That doesn't make any sense. It's a possibility. Okay, whatever. That means you.
They're not saying yes, but they're not saying no either,
Means
which
they
means
did it.
which means it's closer to the truth than anything that it was sabotaged. At least.
Danish officials have confirmed that the Nord Stream 1 leaking has stopped. We can't imagine a scenario that this isn't a targeted attack. Everything speaks against coincidence, a German government official told Der Tagesspiegel. Oh, sorry, Tagesspiegel. Apparently they changed names. Fine Abe says he'll place a C note on the Grand Federal Republic of Albonia. Shit. I'm going to let's see. This happened in the Baltic Sea, right? I'm gonna blame a sect of people, radicals from Kaliningrad.
And I'm
smack in the middle of the Baltic. Just saying.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying.
I'm gonna say.
Sure, Poland would like to have that back too.
Yes.
Sean, I'm gonna say it was rebels from the Republic of Dagestan.
Nope. It's gonna be Kaliningrad. They're right there. Anyway. We can't imagine a scenario that this isn't a targeted attack. Everything speaks against coincidence, right? The Nord Stream 1 pipeline entirely shut down service back in August when officials insisted that sanctions against Russia over its invasion of Ukraine made it impossible to maintain and repair the system. The Nord Stream 2 was never officially operational. They pressurized the system, though, because they were planning on it going operational, which is why it leaks. The CIA in the summer had warned counterparts in Berlin of a possible attack on the pipeline. That's not a good look, bro. You're talking months before it happened. The CIA is like, hey, Germany, we're just saying, you should probably watch that pipe, because shit could happen. Just saying. Why would we do that? Why would we do that?
Why would we?
Stoltenberg dismissed suggestions that Russia was trying to drag NATO into the Ukraine war, stressing that NATO is, quote, not part of this conflict. Well, no, because you're a little bitch. Putin has tried again and again to tell a story that NATO is party to the conflict and that NATO caused this conflict. He explains. That's absolutely wrong. Okay, that I would agree with. First of all, this is a war that Putin has started. I would agree there too. It's a war by his choice. Yes. Second, NATO's not part of this conflict, he continued. What we do is that we provide support to Ukraine, an independent, sovereign nation in Europe that has the right to defend itself against a war of aggression. Okay, now he's just splitting hairs in the gray area, isn't he? We're not in this war. We're just supporting the defenders of this war. That's what he's saying. But Stoltenberg could not directly comment on the possibility of fast-tracking Ukraine's membership into the organization. Actually, no. He ducked this question repeatedly the day this story came out. Ukrainian President Zelensky on Friday said his government had accelerated its application last Friday. Accelerated its application after proving to be a compatible partner. Stoltenberg said that any decision on membership has to be taken by consensus and that the organization's top priority is to support Ukraine. They need more support today. They need continued support, he says. That's the message I conveyed to the presidents. And when I spoke to him a few days ago, that's the message I sent to NATO leaders. Now, sidebar. If supporting Ukraine is NATO's top priority, right? Then wouldn't admitting them into NATO be the ultimate sign of support for that country? Makes sense, right? Crickets. How else do you support a country by... Well, how can you support a country more than just saying, you're in the club. Now we will protect you. You are our equal. He doesn't want to do it. Why? Number one, bitch. Number two, public beta test of military equipment. I still believe that to this day. That's why everyone's doing this. It's a public beta test. Sling blade drone, invented because of this conflict. We're testing it. Certain mid-range weapons of HIMARS. We sent them to test it. The long-range shit, we already know it works. F-16s to Poland so they can send MiG-29s to Ukraine. We already know those work. Of course we're not going to send those. HARM missiles, anti-radiation missiles, they are now adapting our advanced missiles onto MiG-29s to see if it works. Newsflash, it works brilliantly. Shocker. Anyway, moving on. Still on Sunday. God, what a long day this was.
You picked too many stories.
Well, I picked good ones. The leaders of 9 NATO nations from Central and Eastern Europe issued a joint statement on Sunday in support of Ukraine's path to membership in the alliance. We firmly stand behind the 2008 Bucharest NATO summit decision concerning Ukraine's future membership. This came from the presidents of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Montenegro, Poland, Czechia? Must be Chechnya.
Yeah.
Romania, North Macedonia, and Slovakia on Sunday. That's a pretty good coalition. At the 2008 summit, NATO allies said they welcomed Ukraine and Georgia's aspirations to join the alliance, though no clear timetable was ever announced. Mikhailo Podolyak, an advisor to Ukrainian President Zelensky, tweeted on Sunday that 10 NATO countries support Ukraine's bid for membership, including some nations that used to belong to the Soviet Union. We are grateful for the leadership and responsibility, Podolyak tweeted. History is being made today. Zelensky said on Friday that Kyiv has accelerated its application for NATO membership after Russia annexed 4 Ukrainian territories. De facto, we have already proven compatibility with alliance standards. They are real for Ukraine, real on the battlefield and in all aspects of our interactions, Zelensky says. We trust each other, we help each other, and we protect each other. That's what an alliance is. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg declined to comment on Ukraine's pathway to membership because he's a bitch, telling NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday that any decision has to be taken by consensus, but that the alliance top priority was to support Ukraine. Word salad. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said Friday that the U.S. supports NATO's open-door policy for countries that want to join. That's a non-statement. Right now, our view is that the best way for us to support Ukraine is through practical on-the-ground support, and that process in Brussels should be taken up at a different time. So, non-committal. Fuck you, Jake Sullivan. Took like the easy way out. I'm gonna say some words, it's gonna sound like I care, but we're non-committal. That's what that was. And now we move on to Monday, October 3rd, day 222. And this is actually the story of the day. So, let's get into it. Boink. A top-of-the-line Russian nuclear-powered submarine has gone missing from its harbor in the Arctic, along with its rumored Doomsday weapon, according to multiple world reports. Not just us, multiple. NATO has reportedly warned members that Russia's Belgorod submarine no longer appeared to be operating out of its White Sea base, where it has been on active duty since July. Officials warned that Russia may plan to test Belgorod's Poseidon weapons. system, a drone equipped with a nuclear bomb that Russia has claimed is capable of creating a radioactive tsunami. This came from Italian media, by the way. The drone can be the drone can be deployed from the submarine at any time and detonated at a depth of 1 kilometer near a coastal city. Russian state media has claimed that the device can create a 1,600-foot wave that smashes into the coast
Holy shit.
and irradiated. I don't think they meant 1,600 feet tall. They probably meant 1,600 feet wide, which is not
Very big.
very big.
No.
But if it's a 1,600-foot wave of radioactive water, that's pretty shitty, right? You don't want to get hit by that.
A conventional nuke can create a couple 100-foot tall.
Well, then maybe they do mean 1,600
Tsunami.
feet tall. I don't know. It didn't
But
really
you're
clarify.
talking like multi megaton unit, like what we were testing out at Bikini Atoll.
Sure, but this is a submarine that's just one giant UAV bomb. Like there's nobody in it. The thing that they
Yeah, I know.
launch from it.
Drone.
The 600-foot submarine was delivered to the Russian Navy in July as part of Russian President Putin's top-secret program that aims to develop and operate a series of new class of superweapons. Rebecca Koffler, a strategic intelligence expert and author of Putin's Playbook, warned that Russia's use of such a weapon would only come as a last resort in the event that Russia and the U.S. are actually in a direct kinetic war and that Russia's losing. So they're not going to use it until they have to face somebody as big as us. That's what she's implying.
Which is why I suspect that there was a U.S. submarine test. Literally, all it's going to do is sit outside that port and listen for the Belgorod to leave port
They still don't know where it is as
and
of
follow
today.
it.
This story was from Monday, and they still don't know where it is on Friday. Just so you know.
No, they're not admitting that they know where it is.
No, you want to know. You want to admit
No,
that you know where
they
it
wouldn't
is.
say,
Nothing
why, you give up your tactical advantage that they don't know that you know?
No. Nothing demoralizes the nation that you're tracking more than globally announcing, we know where you are, so you're not getting away with anything. That's embarrassing. That's a public
It's even more
humiliation.
embarrassing.
That's a global humiliation for the Russian Navy.
Having a U.S. submarine trail you constantly for weeks on end.
They don't have time to do that
Because
right
the
now.
people on the Belgorod will know that we have a sub that's trailing them and there's nothing they can do about it.
They don't want that. I know what you're saying. You're saying that nothing would demoralize the crew more than knowing that they're constantly being shadowed. I would agree. But nothing
We did that
demoralizes
literally
the
throughout the
nation.
entire Cold War.
Right, but this is different. Nothing demoralizes the entire nation than publicly announcing we're on your bitch like stink on shit. Which means they'll never get away with it. That's more demoralizing. This is a psyop.
Why give up your tactical advantage?
There isn't one.
If you got a submarine that is trailing them and they don't know you're fucking there, you have a tactical advantage.
You just said that nothing would demoralize the crew worse than knowing they were being shadowed.
If they knew they were being shadowed.
Right. That's the point.
We're
not trying to demoralize a crew.
Decades.
We're not trying to demoralize one crew. We're trying to demoralize the entire
the Russian
country.
subs everywhere they fucking went, and they didn't have a clue. They did not even know about SOSUS for
until we
fucking
told
15 years. No, until a traitor told them.
Well, okay, but the point is this is...
We trailed their nuke boats for about 20 years, and they didn't have a freaking clue.
First of all, this is not
We knew where their boats were.
Second of all, we're not targeting one submarine. We're targeting an entire nation. We're basically trying to convince an entire nation that they're wasting their time in this war, right? So it's like, okay, you can put your Belgorod out there, but you're wasting your time. If we literally said, we know where you are at any time. Now, we're just saying we know where you are. We're not saying we're right behind you, which means they can't react to that news. All they know is we have publicly announced Try it. We're on you already. We didn't even say
And
how
I'm
many.
still saying, why would you give up your tactical advantage
Because
by
there isn't
announcing that you
one.
can track them?
That's my point. There isn't one. The whole point is to tell them that they wasted their time, so you might as well just go back to port. That's what they're
You're
trying
just
to
going to
do.
have to email Aaron and ask him, because he will tell you the same thing I'm telling you.
No.
The U.S.
This thing
Navy is
here,
extremely tight-lipped
this
about their
thing here,
capabilities for a damn good reason.
right, but this thing here has too many other nations worried about it. Not just us, right?
You don't think we
Nothing
keep
would
things
calm
to
the tits
ourselves
of the
and don't
world.
share,
No, nothing would calm the tits of the world
especially
better.
when it's placed into our favor?
No, because, okay, look. Every time North Korea fires off a bottle rocket, right? Japan worries.
We have the capability of shooting it down.
Exactly, but Japan worries. And the whole world says, relax, we saw it. We can shoot it down at any time. And then, like, Japan's like, okay, but it's still kind of weird that they shot it over our head, right? Well, you've got
Which
many
Japan's getting
nations.
sick of that and is building 2 fucking missile cruisers
You got many
using Aegis
nations
systems.
in the world worried about this weapon here. Because, let's admit, you got to admit, tanks, Russians aren't very good at. They can't afford to build them, and they don't have very many that are working. Planes,
But yet you when this
planes,
first kicked, oh, where's the Armadas? Where are the Armadas?
right. Planes, they, like you said, they don't even have smooth skins. Their radar signature is crap, which means they're not even stealth, which means they don't do that well either. The one thing that the Russians have
No, they
always
don't.
done well is submarines. Always. They've been very good at it.
Good at irradiating their crews? Yes.
Well, okay, there's been a couple of bad ones, but the point is
A
they still
couple,
to this
an
day
entire
had the
class.
fastest submarine ever recorded in the world with the Papa class. They did
Yeah, and
that.
how many of those did they make?
One.
Exactly.
But they did it. They did it.
You don't think if the U.S. Navy wanted to, they could do the same thing?
We've never
If they
done
wanted to
it. They
design
did it
a
in the
boat
60s.
that was specifically designed for that?
They did it in the 60s. We'd never done it since. But then
Because
again,
we didn't
to your
want
credit, to your credit, we landed on the moon. Have they done it since?
Yeah. No one has.
Well, no, because they can't find a studio big enough. Oh!
Oh.
Anyway, point is, this is the thing that they do best. Navy, right? Because they're not good at tanks. They're really not good at planes. But they have been very good at submarines. One cannot deny that.
Well,
Like,
we know they're not really good at aircraft carriers.
yes. But they're good at
Because
submarines.
when your aircraft carrier, your one aircraft carrier has to go see with seagoing tugs in case it breaks down, that puts you in the same league as the British.
Eh. Either way, the point is they do subs pretty well. Even Aaron would tell you that. They do subs pretty fucking well. So when this thing, if they claim it does something, right? You kind of have to take this one at face value until they prove otherwise. But you can always just prevent them and demoralize them before they even leave port. But now that they're out of port and the world is kind of nervous about, oh God, where the hell is this thing? If you say, look, we already know where he's at, relax, and make that public, you're not saying how close you're tracking him or whatever. You're just saying we know where it is. You don't have to say you're right here. You just say,
But the
"We know
U.S.
where it
Navy
is."
will never admit that to begin with.
No, I think they would. In this one instance,
They never would.
no, I think they would. Only to sort of calm the tits of the rest of the world's navies. Seriously.
Why?
I have a story that's going to
Because that
support this.
gives
Relax.
the-
You'll see. You'll see. I'm leading you to this.
Mm-hmm.
I have a story that supports this. I'm telling you. I fucking know this one. Anyway.
Dude, I know multiple people personally that were in the Navy.
I have a story that
themselves.
already proves you wrong. I just haven't read it yet. Give me a minute. We got to get to Wednesday for that. We're still on Monday. Remember, we're catching up. As of Monday, that thing was disappeared and everyone was freaking out. I guess that's the best way to put it. Everyone was freaking out like, "Oh my God, we were watching it. It was there. It was there. It was there. It was gone. Oh shit." That's what the world said on Monday. You saw it. You saw it on the news. I streamed it. I'm like, "Oh shit, that thing disappeared." who the hell fell asleep at the scope? Because somebody was screaming at whoever was on the scope that day. Otherwise, why would that story have broken unless somebody was like, oh shit, I forgot to watch this? It happened. The good news is, it sort of got picked up on again. You'll see. We'll get there. I promise. We'll get there. Anyway, where did I leave off on this story? We tangented like a motherfucker. Oh, here it is. Koffler said that the device is not likely to be fully operational until 2027, but Putin may be testing it as a means to intimidate both the Ukraine and its NATO allies in the West. Putin has warned that Russia's potential use of nuclear weapons is, quote, not a bluff. Belgorod's location remains publicly unknown. Okay, to your credit, publicly unknown. As of Monday, a situation that is not particularly surprising to anybody. Russian submarines have some of the best stealth capabilities in the world, and they've even entered U.S. waters undetected in the past, according to her, Rebecca Koffler. Actually, even our sources, we've heard this before. There have been times when Russian nuclear-powered attack submarines armed with long-range cruise missiles operated undetected for weeks close to U.S. shores. One incident in the early 2010s saw a submarine get detected only after it left U.S. waters. My colleagues from the Office of Naval Intelligence got a serious dressing down by a 4-star general following that event. So yeah, it happens. Anyway.
Why would be a 4-star general be dressing down somebody when it comes to Navy matters?
Probably because the Joint Chiefs has a 4-star general and an admiral and whatever else. So they were like, how the hell did you even let this
Unless
happen?
he's the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff,
Maybe
they
at the
don't
time
play
that
well
was.
together.
I mean, Mark Milley.
Oh, the woke general.
Yeah, well, 4-star general. That's another good example. That's a modern example. Anyway, Tuesday. We made it to Tuesday. October 4th, day 223. 223. Okay, I did this one as a joke, so just brace yourself. I said that this photo was called an actual Russian recruitment poster. Clearly it's not. More than 200,000 Russian citizens have been drafted into the military following Russian President Putin's mobilization order 1 month ago. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, you know, the guy who got dismissed, announced the milestone Tuesday, partially addressing concerns that Putin's regime planned to draft beyond 300,000 troops initially called for. The mobilization seeks to address significant Russian defeats in Ukraine. While Putin verbally stated that only 300,000 men with prior military experience would be drafted, the text of his mobilization order did not include an actual number, nor did it specify that only those with military experience could be drafted. Reports across Russia have seen citizens with no such experience receive conscription papers, leading to a mass exodus of military-aged men. Mongolia, Georgia, and Kazakhstan have borne the brunt of the migration wave, with Georgia stating that daily border crossings have nearly doubled in a week, following Putin's order. More than 100,000 men have fled to Kazakhstan alone. About 4 to 5 days ago, there were 5,000 to 6,000 visitors from Russia daily. That has now increased to over 10,000. This came from Georgia's Interior Minister Vakhtang Gomulari. Many of the men fleeing criticized Putin's invasion effort, stating that they had no interest in going to war with Ukraine. There were a lot of young people, a lot of people trying to get away from Putin. One man, Alexei, who crossed the Mongolian border, had told Reuters. Alexei says he left behind his wife and 2 children and plans to return when the draft is passed. What a bitch. You should have took him with you. We're not afraid, but why do we have to fight in Ukraine? Why, he asks. If other countries would attack Russia, we would fight for our country. But why are we going to Ukraine? What for? Good question. The mobilization effort comes as Ukraine is making significant gains against Russian occupying forces. A Ukrainian counteroffensive in September saw the country regain thousands of square miles of its own territory. Ukrainian forces have also regained key strongholds in Kherson, Donetsk, and Luhansk regions Monday, which Putin claimed to have annexed in an elaborate ceremony last week. Moving on. The story's titled, Daddy's Going to Die. Thousands of Russian troops have reportedly turned to a hotline Kyiv has set up for Moscow's conscripts who wish to lay down arms in Ukraine. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense said last week that Russians were calling in to check on what steps needed to be taken to surrender and what to do if they're conscripted under Russian President Putin's partial mobilization. We have already received more than 2,000 applications. Vitaly Matvienko, a spokesman for the surrender hotline, told the British news outlet Express. Both servicemen of the Russian army and their relatives who want their sons and husbands to stay alive have been calling, he says. Russian men flocked to airports and jammed up borders as fighting-age men attempted to flee following Putin's call to send another 300,000 men to fight in his war in Ukraine, a figure that doubles the number of troops originally positioned on Ukraine's borders in the year that led up to the invasion. Some 260,000 civilians reportedly fled Russia within days of the order as others took to the streets to protest the call. Matvienko told the British publication that Ukraine will adhere to parameters set out under the Geneva Convention. Among other things, we're talking about 3 meals a day, medical care, and the opportunity to contact their relatives. The only chance to avoid death in Ukraine is to surrender, he says. The I Want to Live hotline was first announced by Ukraine's defense ministry on September 19th, 2 days before Putin announced his mobilization efforts. A spokesman for the ministry, Andriy Yusov, told Ukrainian news outlet Pravda the hotline has received a lot of calls from people who had not yet even been called into Russia's ranks. You want to talk about a mass exodus? Alright, so I have a couple of what I call sidebar stories. They fall in the same timeline though, so just bear with me because there's some importance to this. The first one, we're on Wednesday, October 5th, day 224. And I titled this Blofeld Rising. And some of you know exactly what that means because you've heard me in the chat in the lobby for working stiffs that we have every day on the server. I always said that Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and sometimes Richard Branson have constantly been in this competition that I call the Battle of the Blofelds to see who the next global supervillain will be. And I think the consensus is that we all agree that Elon Musk won that by a long way. Even though Bezos looks more like a Blofeld, Elon Musk did more things to win that contest. Just saying. So, with that in mind, Blofeld Rising. Perfect pose, perfect picture for this story. The Kremlin, on Wednesday, applauded Tesla CEO's Elon Musk's recognition and suggestion that Ukraine should capitulate its territory illegally seized by Russia to end the war. You heard that right. It is very positive that somebody like Elon Musk is looking for a peaceful way out of this situation. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters, according to Reuters. Compared to many professional diplomats, Musk is still searching for ways to achieve peace. And achieving peace without fulfilling Russia's conditions is absolutely impossible, he added. In a series of polls he posted on Twitter Monday, Musk suggested that Ukraine cede Crimea over to Russia and that the UN hold its own referenda in the 4 Ukrainian regions Russia has attempted to annex. This is highly likely to be the outcome in the end, just a question of how many more have to die before then, he says. Musk, that is. over 59% of the 2.7 million poll takers appeared to disagree with Musk's proposals. Musk then posted a separate poll that questioned if the will of the people who live in the Donbass and Crimea should decide whether they're a part of Russia or Ukraine. Kyiv has repeatedly said that it will not cede land to Russian forces, who have engaged in an illegal and brutal war in Ukraine, as Russian President Vladimir Putin looks to assert dominance over his southern neighbor. The UN has also said it is illegal to hold forced referenda in occupied territory, therefore making last week's voting results void under international law. Ukrainian President Zelensky responded to Musk's proposal by posting his own poll on Twitter and asked, "Which do you like more? One who supports Ukraine or one who supports Russia?" Nearly 80% of the people who took the poll, over 2.4 million people, threw in their support behind Ukraine. The Kremlin spokesman on Tuesday reportedly alleged that bots were actively participating in the voting, though he provided no evidence to back his claim. Basically,
Yeah.
Ukrainians are calling Musk a traitor now.
I can tell you another type of voting
Go ahead.
that possibly had had bots in it, but
Sure.
we can't talk about that because
Dead
apparently
bots.
that's
That would get us banned.
Dead
that would
bots.
get us banned.
Dead bots.
Dead
Lots
bots.
of dead bots.
Mhm.
But yeah, apparently the man who provided Starlink to Ukraine is also now being called a traitor.
Are you
Because,
surprised?
Well, apparently Starlink's been having major issues in Ukraine the last couple of weeks.
well, traitor net. I mean, the thing is like, he's asking a sovereign nation to cede 15% more territory and Crimea, which never belonged to the Russians, in the name of
Do
peace.
you know who he reminds me of?
Blofeld?
No.
Chamberlain?
Prime Minister Chamberlain.
I knew you were getting there. I knew it. The thing
Because
is,
who does Putin remind you of with his Wunderweapons?
Yeah.
Yeah, I went there.
Yeah, I know. You just broke Godwin's law.
Not
Appropriate.
entirely, but close.
The argument's over. We broke Godwin's law. Good night, everybody. No, you're right, though. The comparison is accurate. So it's hard not to.
Madman causing a war?
Madman with
It was
nukes.
Poland 1939 all over again.
I just want to see a submarine called the Yangtze pull up next to Boston and pop up.
Because you
with
keep
Chinese-
wanting your damn power armor.
Yes, I'm glad you got the reference. Thank you.
I knew exactly where you were going, so you said Boston.
The Commonwealth wasteland. Anyway, moving on. I think this is another side story here. Yeah, it is. Sorry if that tweet, it looks a little small. If you're watching this in full screen, you probably read that just fine. A member of the Chinese state-affiliated media has threatened Elon Musk. Yep, now Blofeld's under threat. On Twitter after the Tesla CEO weighed in on the Russia-Ukraine war. In a series of polls posted to Twitter Monday, Musk suggested that Ukraine cede Crimea over to Russia and that the UN hold its own referenda in the 4 Ukrainian regions Russia has attempted to annex. On Tuesday, Hu Xijin, the former chief editor of Chinese Communist Party state tabloid, The Global Times, screenshotted an image of Musk's tweets about the conflict and warned that he would be taught a lesson. Elon Musk has released his personality a bit too much, and he believes too much that the U.S. and the West's freedom of speech. He will be taught a lesson, Hu tweeted. Who? H-U. I have to ask the question. Who the fuck are you? Who? Sorry, bad joke.
Knew you were going there.
Yeah! Anyway.
That show is actually back on the air, too.
This is highly likely to be the outcome in the end. Just a question of how many will die before then, Musk had written, adding that a nuclear war was a possible but unlikely outcome. 59% of the nearly 3 million poll takers appeared to disagree with Musk's proposals. Musk then posted a separate poll that questioned if the, quote, will the people who live in Donbass and Crimea should decide whether they're part of Russia or Ukraine. This is not the first time WHO, WHO, now works as a commentator for the propaganda outlet and has threatened a U.S. citizen. In July, WHO suggested China, WHO, I feel like I have to specify that, suggested China should detain and punish Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi for visiting Taiwan. Sidebar. I will wrap her up in a scarlet bow and FedEx overnight her to you, if you so wish.
We will even give her an IV of wine to keep her busy.
I will give her an IV of Chianti and let her sit on a throne of her $30,000 ice cream. You can have her. End sidebar. This is not the first time... Oh, I already said that, didn't I? Yeah. My suggestion to the Chinese government and military. If Pelosi visits Taiwan, PLA military aircraft will accompany Pelosi's plane to enter the island, making a historic crossing of the island by military aircraft from the mainland for the first time. He wrote this on Twitter. Its significance would overwhelm Pelosi's visit. Well, guess what? It didn't happen, did it? Who took exception, who took exception, to the Biden administration's statements claiming to have no concrete details or information about the planned trip? I didn't know. Biden is supposed to have the ability to prevent the reckless visit of Pelosi, rather than, I don't know what the status of it is. That was a quote, by the way. If the U.S. can't restrain her, let China restrain her and punish her. Go right ahead, bro! I'll give you a Nobel Peace Prize. PLA Air Force will surely make her visit a disgrace to herself and the U.S. Where do I send your Peace Prize? 1 week later, he suggested the country shoot down Pelosi's plane visiting Taiwan if the aircraft refused to divert course. Again.
Please do so.
Again. Where do I send the Nobel Peace Prize? Demonetized. If U.S. fighter jets escort Pelosi's plane into Taiwan, it's an invasion, he wrote. The PLA has the right to forcibly dispel Pelosi's plane and the U.S. fighter jets, including firing warning shots and making tactical movements of obstruction. If ineffective, then shoot them down. I'm sorry. I fucking dare you to try that. Anyway, we have missiles that we can fire from 120 miles out. Lock, fire, turn around, and be halfway home before you even realize we shot at you. So go right the fuck ahead, bro. Anyway. But I don't know shit about war. Or apparently military hardware. Even though I know what an AIM-120D is.
Yeah, apparently stingers are not man-portable.
Anyway. A U.S. government official at the time said the rhetoric was, quote, unnecessary. WHO, HU, has continued to write and speak for the CCP online and at national events. The former editor rose to prominence with aggressive, mocking, and intentionally provocative comments on social media. Sorry, I'm getting kind of tired. However, a series of scandals and serious accusations have damaged his reputation domestically and abroad. WHO, HU, was accused by a former deputy editor, Maggie Dawn Jingtao, of fathering children with multiple colleagues at the Global Times. He has denied the accusations, accusing Jingtao of blackmailing him for his position at the newspaper. I'm sorry, but that sounds like sour grapes. That sounds like this dude was Don Juan and banging all the women in the office pool, and this chick was too ugly and he didn't want to touch her, so she was like, he did this! And he was like, no, I didn't do it, you're just ugly. Just saying. It got down to middle school antics. Moving on. And this is the thumbnail story. So I'm actually not going to change the picture for this one. October 5th, Naval News segment. New images. There's pictures right there, so I don't get to change it. New images reveal Russia's missing submarine, Belgorod, in the Arctic. Media hype claims that a Russian submarine, the Belgorod, has vanished. This may be exaggerated. Naval News can share images of the submarine operating on the surface in the Arctic. The whereabouts of a new Russian submarine, the Belgorod, has captured headlines around the world. With a degree of hysteria, there have been reports that it had been deployed with its nuclear apocalypse and doomsday weapons, even that it has disappeared, though we know submarines don't do that. Naval News had been keeping an eye on the topic since before the stories broke. Here's the information about her activities. Images obtained show that the submarine was operating in the Barents Sea, north of Russia's Kola Peninsula. The Belgorod, also known as K-329, is a unique submarine. She's 583 feet long, 50 feet wide, and somewhere in the region of 30,000 tons. This makes it by far the largest built anywhere in the world since the famous Typhoon class. She's armed with the Poseidon strategic weapon, which itself is unique. Described by the U.S. Navy as an intercontinental nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed autonomous torpedo, that's a mouthful, it combines incredible range with hard-to-kill performance. There is a concern that with current weapons, it is effectively unstoppable once it's launched. Sidebar here. The reason they say that is because this weapon can be programmed to run a patrol indefinitely as long as the fuel holds up, the nuclear fuel. So to say that it's unstoppable once launched implies because you never really know where it's at in its patrol program. They could set it, like imagine if the Belgorod programmed this thing to sail a certain pattern around interests in the West, and then the Belgorod suddenly was attacked and destroyed. Well, the weapon that it had released is already programmed. It's just going to go off and do its thing like a good little robot. So unless you can hear it and seek it and destroy it, technically, yeah, it's unstoppable. Because you have to find it, and then you have to stop it. So that's where that line of thought comes from, I suppose. Anyway, launched in 2019, Belgorod was formally commissioned on July 8th, 2022. So this is one of her first longer-range trips, but she's still very close to home, in the Russian Navy's backyard, practically. We noted that the submarine was leaving Severodvinsk in the White Sea a few weeks ago, and she was in the Barents Sea by September 22nd. There's a couple of marks on that map, you'll see it there. She was still there on September 27th. On both dates, she was observed on the surface. This is not unusual for new submarines like this, because they're running drills and tests and whatever. Predictions are dangerous in this game. However, we view a test launch of Poseidon as not out of the question. This could be routine to test a new weapon system, or it could principally be political or as a demonstration. Testing nuclear weapons, even without the warheads, may be part of Russia's chosen nuclear escalation ladder. I think the Wolf's Call covered a similar situation, where you can test fire a weapon even without the nuclear warhead. Anyway. We will leave it to nuclear weapon wonks to better assess the nuclear ladder, but we cannot rule out a test. However, her movements are also broadly in line with what we would expect of a new submarine. Russian political leaders may value the ambiguity of her being at sea, but they have not been doing very much to fully hide her movements. So, partially to Scott's credit, this thing disappeared, but then we've been watching it pop up on the surface for several days. So up until September 27th, it didn't really disappear. It was just out on patrol tests and stuff like that, which everyone does that with new submarines. You got to make sure it works before you put it into active service. But the 27th was over a week ago. The idea that it had disappeared was after the 27th. It was the 3rd when the stories of it disappearing began. So this story was actually about, well, it didn't actually disappear. We've been watching it for a while. But even then again, I got this story today, which means even this source doesn't know what happened to it after the 27th. But until it pops back up on the surface, no one knows where it's at. But so far, what they're trying to say is, calm down. It's kind of in its place where it does its trials anyway. It's where they always do them. So you could try to read the tea
Well, the
leaves,
Russians like to operate up in the Arctic.
yeah, I mean, this is their this
They have
they
for
have a base
decades.
there. Yeah. And this is where they do their testing. So it's like they could be doing their testing, yes. And as of up until the 27th, that's what all observations indicate. It's just all of a sudden you get in the week after that picture was taken, we've had threats of nuclear escalation. We've had presidents talk about the apocalypse and Armageddon. So everyone's getting kind of wound up with this. And then all of a sudden the submarine hasn't surfaced in a few days and everyone's like, where the hell is it? After all the stories. So you can kind of see where like there's some Chicken Littleism on display here. But it would be nice to know where it is, truth be told, right? Like if it pops up tomorrow, roughly in the same area, everyone's going to calm down and go, come on, man. They're fucking today's movie day with popcorn and hamburgers on that boat or whatever. Stuff like that. Anyway, there was a second segment of this. So they addressed the Nord Stream attack too. Another topic which needs addressing is the leaks in the Nord Stream gas pipelines under the Baltic on September 26th. These are believed to have been a deliberate act of sabotage, and Russia is a candidate. Belgorod has another important capability as well as carrying the Poseidon. She can act as a mother submarine host platform for special deep diving midget submarines which can operate on the sea floor. So the last story with the pictures. Russia has a fleet of these mother submarines for seabed warfare. Technically, Belgorod would be suited to carry out such an attack, even in relatively shallow water, and media did turn to her as the best known example of this type of special mission submarine. However, it's very unlikely that she was involved in this attack. She's known to have been observed in the Barents Sea on September 22nd to the 27th. That makes it impossible for her to have been in the Baltic at the time of the attacks. And looking at her past sailing plans, it's equally unlikely that it sailed to the Baltic even before those trials. This doesn't rule out that Russia's not behind the attacks. It just rules out that the Belgorod wasn't the one that was involved in those attacks. So they're saying, maybe the Russians did it, but it's not with that boat. It's with a different one, if they did it. Because they have more than one that have those midget submarines that they can deploy from it.
They operate a small fleet.
Yeah.
That's actually operated separately from the Russian Navy.
Is it? So it's like...
Yep.
How would you describe that? Is it like the Navy and then like the SEALs kind of a thing?
No, it's the Navy, and then they have a small fleet. It's like 3 or 4 of them that they operate under the auspices of some scientific research organization.
Yeah. I read a story about that earlier too. It's like some fancy name, and it gives it like an offhanded.
It's their spy satellites.
Sure.
Spy subs.
They're counterintelligence, espionage, super spy, super SEALs, basically.
Mm-hmm.
They're Russian James Bondskis. Sorry, that's terrible. Anyway, moving on. Thursday. Promise, we're almost done. I think. Hopefully. Maybe. Maybe.
Maybe.
1, 2, 3, 4, 7 stories to go. I think.
Jesus Christ.
Sorry. I thought it was going to be quick too.
How many stories did you have?
I don't know. I got 7 left. I have less stories than I did last week. I had 5 less stories than last week. I can tell you that much.
Maybe
Yeah,
I
but
can
these
actually
ones are turning
push
into
one.
freaking long ass stories.
Sorry. Anyway, rocket attack. That's what this one's called. Thursday, October 6th, day 225. So, yesterday. At least 7 Russian missile strikes rocked the city of Zaporizhia, and yes, that is a picture of said attack. As Moscow looks to gain control over, quote, annexed regions of Ukraine as Ukrainian forces continue to advance. Residential buildings were hit in the regional capital, killing at least 1 and trapping at least 5 in the rubble, including a 3-year-old. Preliminary data on victims of the enemy attack. 1 woman was killed. There are at least 5 people under the rubble of the houses. This is from the head of Zaporizhia's regional military administration, Alexander Staruk. He also originally said that 2 people had been killed, but later confirmed that one of the injured victims had been saved after receiving medical attention. The strikes came just hours after Ukrainian President Zelensky said 3 more towns located in the northern part of Kherson region in the southern Ukraine had been, quote, liberated. There will be more, he said in an overnight address referring to Ukraine's counteroffensive in the south. The UK Defense Ministry said in its daily intelligence update Thursday that Ukrainian units had pushed the front line forwards by an additional 12 miles along the east bank of the Inhulets and west bank of the Dnipro. However, the ministry noted that they, quote, not yet threatened the main Russian defensive positions in Kherson. Russia has committed the majority of its severely undermanned airborne forces, the VDV, to the defense of Kherson. Therefore, Russia currently has few additional high-quality, rapidly deployable forces available to stabilize the front. It likely aims to deploy mobilized reservists into the sector. Ukrainian troops are also advancing by pushing south out of the northern Kharkiv region, which it has recently and largely retaken from Russian occupying forces. They've advanced east into Luhansk and Donetsk. Zaporizhia remains a highly contested region where fighting continues, although nobody can immediately confirm whether any advances have been made in the region. Russian President Putin officially claimed that 4 regions of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia as Russian on Wednesday, despite continuous reports of retreat by his troops. When asked by reporters if there was a contradiction between Putin's rhetoric on seizing 4 regions and the reality on the ground, a Kremlin spokesperson said, "There is no contradiction whatsoever. They will be with Russia forever, and they will be returned." This came from Dmitry Peskov. Mobilized forces are expected to reinforce Russia's efforts in eastern Ukraine, though they are also believed to be underarmed and severely undertrained. Well, no shit. Moving on. These are quicker stories, by the way, Scott. That's why there's 7. It's going to be like bang, bang, bang. Next story.
You don't go on a tangent.
You're going to love this one. This is a short one, too. Russian authorities have brought treason charges against a prominent opposition activist who was jailed for allegedly spreading false information about Russia's military operation in Ukraine. The charges against Vladimir Kara-Murza Jr. stem from speeches he gave in several Western countries that criticized the Kremlin's rule, according to the activist's lawyers, Vadim Prokhorov. These speeches did not carry any threat to the country. It was public, open criticism, Prokhorov told Russian state news agency TASS. Kara-Murza denies committing treason, the lawyer says. If convicted, he faces a possible prison sentence of up to 20 years. Kara-Murza was jailed in April on a charge of spreading false information about the Russian military. Fake news. The charge followed a March 15th speech he gave to the Arizona House of Representatives in which he denounced Russia's military action in Ukraine. Russia adopted a law criminalizing spreading fake news about its military shortly after Russian troops rolled into Ukraine on February 24th. Authorities have used the law, which authorizes a prison sentence of up to 15 years for a conviction against dozens of people to stifle opposition to what the Kremlin calls a special military operation. Kara-Murza, a journalist, was an associate of opposition leader Boris Nemtsov, who was killed near the Kremlin in 2015. He himself survived poisonings in 2015 and 2017 that he blamed on the Kremlin. Russian officials have officially denied responsibility. Of course they did. Anyway, there was a side story to this. Do you remember a long time ago I did a story about this Russian journalist? And I was like, wow, she's kind of hot. I was like, she wants asylum. She can come to my house or whatever. Apparently, I forgot if she ran away or she skipped a court hearing or something, or she ran away from house arrest. So, yeah, she's actually still in the news. And apparently she's still trapped in Russia. But she's still on this side of the grass. Anyway.
For how long?
Well, I'm just surprised she's still alive even to this point. Like, I saw the picture today, and I'm like, wow, she's still alive. So, pretty amazing. Moving on. And this is a story that the mic strike brought up, actually. I think. Maybe you did. I don't know. You two can fight over who claims this one.
Scott can have it.
2 Russians landed at St. Lawrence Island in the Bering Sea on Wednesday to request asylum after fleeing their homeland to escape compulsory military service, both U.S. senators from Alaska said on Thursday. Sorry, when I read that, the first thing I read is, I present to you the nuclear ballistic submarine Red October. And we ask for asylum in your United States.
Give me one ping only.
Yeah. This
We're
incident...
going to travel all this way just to hide it in the river.
Yes. Love that part, actually. This incident makes 2 things clear. First, the Russian people don't want to fight Putin's war of aggression against Ukraine. This came from Senator Dan Sullivan from Alaska. Second, given Alaska's proximity to Russia, our state has a vital role to play in securing America's national security. This came from FUD and Rhino Lisa Murkowski. She said that the 2 Russians landed at a beach near Gamble, a small community on the northwest tip of St. Lawrence Island. You know, I should just move up there and take her job. She's useless. Russian President Putin announced a partial mobilization to draft about 300,000 men into active duty last month. Thousands of men have fled Russia in the wake of that order to neighboring countries, including Mongolia, Georgia, and Kazakhstan. Finland closed its 830-mile-long border with Russia last week to individuals with tourist visas amid the migrant surge. Murkowski said Thursday that the arrival of 2 Russians in Alaska underscores the need for a stronger security posture in America's Arctic. You know what? I agree with her there. We are actively engaged with federal officials and residents in Gamble to determine who these individuals are. But right now, we already know that the federal response was lacking. Only local officials and state law enforcement had the capability to immediately respond to the asylum seekers, while Customs and Border Protection had to dispatch a Coast Guard aircraft from over 750 miles away to get on scene. Well, no shit, it's in the fucking Alaskan outback. Anyway, the Department of Homeland Security said that both men were transported to mainland Alaska. The individuals were transported to Anchorage for inspection, which includes a screening and vetting process, and then subsequently processed in accordance with applicable U.S. immigration laws under the Immigration and Nationality Act. Look, I don't disagree with her. The proximity of parts of Alaska to Russia is like... It's longer than the proximity from the tip of Florida, Key West to Cuba, okay? But it has the same flavor. You know what I mean? It can be done in a day trip. That's the best way I can describe it. How do you prevent that? Well, I don't know. Put some Tomahawk missile launchers on Little Diomede Island pointed at Big Diomede Island, which is the Russian island right on the other side of the international date line. Or, in this case, St. Lawrence Island. Put a couple of put a couple of Minuteman missiles there. There you go. Problem solved. Problem solved. Border secured. Because you don't have to landmine Alaska. There's no river for people to try to cross, right? It's not racist. It's just a geographical observation. That's all I'm saying. We have to sea mine the Barents Sea. Anyway. Moving on. 4 stories to go, Scott. See? We're getting there. This one's called Dipshit. And I think you'll see why. There you go. President Biden said in his address to the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee on Thursday night that the country under his leadership is as close to Armageddon as it has been since the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 1960s. Well, no shit. You brought us there, dipshit. Anyway, speaking at
Kennedy.
a fundraiser... Huh?
Him.
He took us there. Speaking at a fundraiser in New York, Biden addressed Russian President Vladimir Putin, threatening to use a nuclear weapon. Putin was not joking when he talks about the use of tactical nuclear weapons or biological or chemical weapons, he says. We have not faced the prospect of Armageddon since Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Wow. You should be so you should feel so special and so lucky. You're going to be in the history books as the next idiot that allowed them to get this close. Russia has hinted several times at the possibility that it can unleash weapons of mass destruction in its battle with Ukrainian forces if Putin believes the fate of the country is at risk. I want to remind you that our country has also has various means of destruction, and for separate components, and more modern than those of NATO countries. And when the territorial integrity of our country is threatened to protect Russia and our people, we will certainly use all these means at our disposal. I think we said that last week too. White House officials said that the Biden administration has communicated directly with Russian officials about what kind of response using nuclear weapons would bring. While officials have said that they aren't going to share publicly what the U.S. response would look like, they have said it would be catastrophic. I don't think there's any such thing as the possibility and the ability to easily use a tactical weapon that would not end up with Armageddon, Biden said at a Thursday evening speech. He's not wrong, but he's not helping either. And with that, we're on to Friday, to today. Welcome to Friday, October 7th, day 226. Thankfully, the last 3 stories are short ones, so we'll get through these quickly, and I promise to let you go. I titled this one, Is He Wrong? Ukrainian officials have seemingly walked back comments from President Zelensky, who appeared to call upon NATO to launch preemptive strikes into Russia to stop President Vladimir Putin's nuclear threats. During a virtual address to the Lowy Institute on October 6th, Zelensky was asked how the international community could help prevent a potential nuclear war between Russia and Ukraine. In his answer, Ukrainian president mentioned launching preemptive strikes. We can already see that these people, Russian officials, are capable of such atrocities. What must NATO do? Make it impossible for Russia to use nuclear weapons, he answered. Zelensky added, but what is more important? I am once again turning to the international community, as I did before February 24th, to do preventative strikes so that they know what will await them if they use nuclear weapons. The strikes could not happen the other way around, he says, as to wait for Russian nuclear strikes would only further escalate the conflict. Reconsider applying pressure, Zelensky urged in his address. That's what NATO should do. And reconsider the order in which it is applied. The Kyiv Independent reported Maria Zakharova, a spokesman for Russia's foreign ministry, claimed the comments were paramount to calling for nuclear war, which would destroy the planet. Dmitry Peskov, the press secretary for Putin, said Zelensky's words were a call to start a world war with unpredictable and horrific consequences. Serhiy
As if we're now already all in a world war.
Well, yeah, because like the nuclear clock now is at what, 11:59 and 51 seconds because of this shit.
Yep.
Serhiy Nikiforov, Zelensky's spokesperson, explained later that Zelensky was actually calling for preventative sanctions against Russia to prevent the use of nuclear weapons, according to the Kyiv Independent, who happens to provide all the information in the scroller at the bottom, by the way, if you were wondering. Putin initially suggested using nuclear weapons in Ukraine, as he said on September 21st that Russia would use everything it can when its territorial integrity is threatened. The comment came as Russia sought to annex 4 eastern and southeastern Ukrainian regions, which approved Kremlin-backed referendums to join Russia. This is not a bluff, the president added at the time. In Zelensky's speech, he called for, quote, clear condemnation from the world against Russia's ongoing invasion. He also called for, quote, new and tough sanctions against Moscow. Preemptive strike sounds like a pretty good idea. You know, once upon a time there was that 40-mile-long convoy and a couple of A-10s would have had a field day. That's a preemptive strike. Just saying.
Yep.
That probably could have ended the war before it even began. Just a thought.
Well, we
Moving
know
on.
Russia was this weak, though. That's the problem.
Yeah. We're at the penultimate story. Woo-hoo. Here we go. We're almost there.
Almost.
Nuke prep. That's the name of this story. Pretty good picture, too, actually. Ukrainian President Zelensky urged world leaders to act and stop Russian President Putin, as he warns that Moscow has begun preparations for the possible use of nuclear weapons. They begin to prepare their society, Zelensky said during a BBC interview at the presidential palace in Kyiv. This is very dangerous. They're not ready to do it, to use it, but they've begun communicating and talking about it. They don't know whether they'll use it or not, he stressed. I think it's dangerous to even speak about it. President Biden on Friday set social media into a frenzy when he said that Putin was, quote, not joking when he talks about the use of tactical nuclear weapons, adding that we have not faced the prospect of Armageddon since Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Mm-hmm.
The White House defended Biden's comments, saying this kind of irresponsible rhetoric we have seen is in no way for the leader of a nuclear-armed state to speak. And that's what the president was making very clear. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters aboard Air France that officials have not seen any reason to adjust our own strategic nuclear posture. Nor do we have any indications that Russia is preparing to imminently use nuclear weapons, she added. Putin's rhetoric and policy have grown more aggressive after Ukraine made significant gains and drove back the Russian military in the Donbas region, advancing 25 miles in one day this week after Putin claimed to have annexed the rebel region as part of Russia. Putin last month approved the partial mobilization of Russia's military, allowing him to call a draft which sent Russian men fleeing from the country to avoid military service in what has turned into an extremely difficult campaign for Moscow. And that he has pushed Putin into a corner from which critics fear he will take the most drastic actions. He made renewed threats of using any force necessary, including nuclear weapons, to defend what he viewed as Russian territory from other nations. Rebecca Koffler, the former DIA agency officer, says that Zelensky is worried and has reason to be, as Putin's threat to use a nuclear weapon remains a real possibility that Western leaders may unintentionally provoke with rhetoric. Zelensky wants the U.S. and NATO to preemptively strike Russia to prevent Putin from unleashing Armageddon on Ukraine. But unintentionally, Zelensky, as well as Biden, are ratcheting up the escalation, she says. explaining that what they see as a deterrent only feeds into the paranoia. Putin views it as his last and decisive battle that he cannot possibly lose because the stakes are of an existential nature for Russia and for himself, she added. I don't know if I buy that.
Mm,
I really don't. I think
I'm-
if Putin cared about his own people, the value of human life, he wouldn't be conscripting people and shoving more of them into the meat grinder into a war that's incredibly unpopular by his own countrymen, his own media, his own allies. Only the crazies are supporting him. I mean, think about the company this motherfucker keeps right now. Kadyrov, Chechen douchebag. uh, Kim Jong Un, North Korean exiled douchebag. The
Rocket boy,
Ayatollah the Ayatollah
rocket
Khamenei
boy
of
douche.
Iran, who's selling him broken, fucked up drones that don't work. Another douchebag.
Would have been better off getting them from
Other-
North Korea.
Would have been better off folding origami paper fucking planes. Those like cranes. Anyway, point is, the people, the axis of evil which he has created, are all douchebags. Xi Jinping, douchebag. Self-proclaimed leader for life. Apparently, he's losing popularity amongst his own government.
Rapidly.
Rapidly, exactly.
Well, that's because of the situation that's going on over there that they're not talking about in the news.
Yeah.
Things that need not be discussed. We need
No,
Jimmy in here.
no.
He's a master of that.
No, it's the their economy is about to collapse
Of course.
because of the housing crisis over there.
Well, they bought something they never built.
Uh-huh.
All right, last story of the day. This actually came to me an hour before we went on air, and I was going to do the cutoff before the story, but the details of it were very good, and the picture was excellent. So I was like, nope, I'm going to do this one. So this is the last story of the night. That's a really good picture. Like, I like that. I need a big version of that for a desktop background. A series of explosions rocked the eastern Ukrainian city of Kharkiv early Saturday. Now, remember, when I'm reporting these stories, I am 7 hours behind. So for me, as I read this story, or as the story was written, it was already 2:26 a.m. Saturday, day 227. But the story fell on my desk at 7:26 p.m., day 226, Friday today. Just to give you some context. So yeah, a series of explosions rocked the eastern city of Ukrainian city of Kharkiv early Saturday, sending towering plumes of illuminated smoke into the sky and triggering a series of secondary explosions, that photo being one of them.
Mm.
There were no immediate reports of casualties. The blast came hours after Russia concentrated its attacks in its increasingly troubled invasion of Ukraine on areas it illegally annexed, while the death toll from earlier missile strikes on apartment buildings in the southern city of Zaporizhia rose to over 14. Kharkiv Mayor Ihor Terekov said on Telegram that the early morning explosions were the result of missile strikes in the center of the city. He said that the blast had sparked fires at one of the city's medical institutions and a non-residential building. In a rebuke to Russian President Putin and his conduct of Europe's worst armed conflict since World War II, the Norwegian Nobel Committee awarded the Nobel Peace Prize to human rights organizations in his country and Ukraine, and to an activist jailed in Russia's ally, Belarus. Berit Reiss-Anderson, the committee's chair, said the honor went to 3 outstanding champions of human rights, democracy, and peaceful coexistence. And here you thought I was joking about handing out Nobel Peace Prizes, and here they are doing it today. Putin this week illegally claimed 4 regions of Ukraine as Russian territory, including the Zaporizhia region that is home to Europe's largest nuclear power plant, whose reactors were shut down last month. Now, there's a story that I haven't shared with you. 2 stories. They took over the region, then they kidnapped the head of the nuclear plant again, blindfolded him, and drove him away. He was released and returned yesterday, just so you know. Fighting near the Russian-occupied Zaporizhia nuclear power plant has alarmed the UN's atomic energy watchdog, which on Friday doubled to 4 the number of its inspectors monitoring plant safeguards. An accident there could release 10 times more potentially lethal radiation than the world's worst nuclear disaster at Chernobyl 36 years ago. Well, yeah, because there's 6 reactors. The situation with the occupation, shelling, and mining of the Chernobyl and Zaporizhia nuclear power plants by Russian troops is causing consequences that will have a use of emergency backup diesel generators to run safety systems. Sorry, if there's a little pause there, for some reason OBS had a fart.
Mm-hmm.
The city of Zaporizhia is located 53 kilometers, 33 miles if you're in freedom units, away from the nuclear power plant as a crow flies, and remains under Ukrainian control. To cement Russia's claim to the region, Russian forces bombarded the city with S-300 missiles on Thursday, with more attacks reported on Friday. Ukrainian authorities said the death toll from the strikes on apartment buildings rose to 14 on Friday, while 12 people were wounded in the bombardment and remained hospitalized. Missiles also struck the city overnight, wounding 1 person, Zaporizhia's Governor Alexander Staruk said. Russia also used Iranian-made Shahed-136 drones there for the first time and damaged 2 infrastructure facilities, he says. With its army losing ground to a Ukrainian counteroffensive in the south and east, Russia has deployed unmanned, disposable Iranian-made drones that are cheaper and less sophisticated than missiles but can still damage ground targets. The Washington-based Institute for the Study of War said Russia's use of the explosive-packed drones was unlikely to affect the course of the war. They've used many drones against civilian targets in newer areas, likely hoping to generate nonlinear effects through terror. Such effects are not succeeding. In other Moscow-annexed areas, Russia's defense ministry reported Friday that its forces had repelled Ukrainian advances near the city of Lyman and retaken 3 villages elsewhere in the eastern Donetsk region. The ministry also claimed that Russian forces had prevented Ukrainian troops from advancing on several villages in the southern Kherson region. Ukrainian President Zelensky stated in his nightly video address Friday that this week alone, his military has recaptured 300 square miles of territory in the east and 29 settlements, including 6 in the Luhansk region, which Putin previously annexed. In total, Ukrainian forces have liberated 940 square miles of land and 96 settlements since the beginning of its counteroffensive. I'm going to have a hard time pronouncing this. In Ukraine's Dnipropetrovsk region, Russian troops shelled the city of Nikopol overnight, killing 1 person, wounding others, and damaging buildings, natural gas pipelines, and electricity systems, the governor reported. Nikopol lies along the Dnieper River, across the Russian-held territory of the nuclear power plant. The city has been shelled frequently for weeks. The trail of Russia's devastation and death from areas where its troops retreated became clearer on Friday. A report by Ukrainian First Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs, Yevhen Yenin, revealed that 530 bodies of civilians have been found in Ukraine's northeastern Kharkiv region since September 7th, so a month ago. The residents killed during the Russian occupation included 257 men, 225 women, 19 children, with 29 people unidentifiable. I guess that means they were mutilated. Most of the bodies were found in a previously disclosed mass grave in the city of Izium. According to Yenin, the recovered bodies bore signs of gunshots, explosions, and torture. Some people had ropes around their necks, hands tied behind their backs, bullet wounds to their knees, and broken ribs. Authorities have identified 22 torture sites in parts of the Kharkiv region that Ukrainian forces recently liberated. In recently recaptured Lyman, workers found 200 individual graves and a mass grave with an unknown number of victims. Donetsk Governor Pavlo Kirilenko reported on Telegram. In Sviatohorsk, that's a hard one. 15 miles from Lyman, 21 bodies of civilians were reburied. Russian military equipment and weapons, meanwhile, is getting into Ukrainian hands. Britain's Ministry of Defense said Friday that Ukrainian forces have captured at least 440 tanks and about 650 armored vehicles since the Russian invasion started on February 24th.
Yay.
Yay. The failure of Russian crews to destroy intact equipment before withdrawing or surrendering highlights their poor state of training and low levels of battle discipline, the British ministry said. With Russian formations under severe strain in several sectors and increasingly demoralized troops, Russia will likely continue to lose a lot of heavy weaponry. Putin ordered a partial mobilization of Russia's army reservists last month to reinforce manpower on the front lines in Ukraine. Mistakes have dogged the military call-up. However, tens of thousands of men have fled Russia, unwilling to fight Putin's war. That has left Russia desperate for troop reinforcements. The Ukrainian military said Friday that 500 former criminals have been mobilized to reinforce Russian ranks in the eastern Donetsk region, where Ukrainian forces have retaken territory. Law enforcement officers are commanding the new units, the military said. It's the dirty dozen, Ski.
The problem is, I read a report today that these reservists, they're getting 2 days of training, of actual basic training, and then being sent to the front lines.
Yeah, it's called the cannon fodder.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's how dire the situation in the Russian military is fighting this war.
The dirty dozen, Ski.
They're about to break.
If they haven't already.
If they're sending their new reservists, with only 2 days of basic training to the front lines, you know that they're about to collapse.
What do you think 2 days of basic training is like? This is rifle. This is the pointy end that you point towards enemy. This is trigger. This is what you pull. Never point this end toward you before pulling trigger.
Never pointed that at your commanding officer either.
This is even better. This is magazine. You're only getting one. Make your shots count. We don't pay you to bring back ammunition. We don't pay you to come back. Ski.
I wonder if they're gonna tell them to mount bayonets next.
I don't know. Any questions? Any questions, right? You get a guy who goes, "Where's our medic?" You don't get a medic. Huh.
You don't need one.
Where's our rations? We don't expect you to live for more than 6 hours. What if we surrender? Well, you're dead to us anyway. Fuck.
That's pretty much how it is.
That's some shitty odds. Russia's state news agency TASS reported Friday that a court in the Russian city of Penza has dismissed the first case against a Russian man called up to serve but refused. 32-year-old man's lawyers had argued that the law under which he was charged applies only to conscription evaders, not those subject to the partial mobilization. In another sign of trouble, reports have surfaced of poor training and a few supplies for the new Russian troops. At least 2 Russian cities, St. Petersburg and Nizhny Novgorod, announced Friday that they were canceling their Russian New Year's and Christmas celebrations and redirecting that money to buy supplies for their troops. Under increasing pressure from his own supporters, as well as critics, Putin continued to reshuffle his military's leadership, replacing the commander of Russia's Eastern Military District.
Ooh.
It's just another, like, I think we announced that last week. He replaced him. He replaced him again. He replaced him again.
Mm-hmm.
How many more keep getting killed? How many have been picked off? You're out of planes. You've got to be running out of tanks. You're definitely out of ships, because 15 have been sunk since the Moskva, right?
Mm.
They haven't sunk another ship,
Moskva.
I don't think, since the Moskva. Because
Yeah.
Putin was like, I don't need this smoke. And he took all his navy out of there, basically. Snake Island, he's like, I don't need that anymore. So, they're kind of done. And what a coincidence. Because so are we.
Mm.
We made it to the end. And if you're still watching, thank you. And you've listened to all of it. And I'm exhausted. I'm going to play this. Because we've spent 2 hours and 36 minutes of your precious time to tell you that this was the War Room. This was day 226.
Ugh.
And I would like to say that this is the last episode, but we know better. This is going to continue. Until it doesn't, we'll continue to bring it to you. So anyway, if you're new to my channel, welcome, but if you're a regular here, welcome back. Either way, check out my other playlists and see if my other interests may be of interest to you. I had planned on farting around and gaming all night. That's sort of out the window now, isn't it? We're all tired. I'm tired, you're tired, we're all tired. Slava Ukraini.
Heroim Slava.
And
Cannot be infringed.
And he got that in too.